Hello you beautiful souls, today we're talking about anatomy. It's a topic that's dreaded by quite a few, but there's great exercises to make drawing anatomy much easier and more intuitive. I promise you, by the end of the video you'll be thinking, yeah, that actually makes so much sense. When you're just starting out to learn how to draw anatomy, striving for perfection might pose as more of a hindrance than it is helpful. Before you're able to sketch out picture-perfect abs or a perfect figure from top to toe, you first need to get a feeling for dynamics and proportions. And the easiest way to do this is by practicing this over and over again. On a regular basis, I incorporate those 30 to 60 second drawings in my work routine. By having such a limited time to come up with a result, you're allowing your brain to stop overthinking. The thing is, you don't even have to like your quick drawings. They're not meant to be pretty in the first place. They're meant to be helpful. One quick disclaimer though, for this tutorial I'm assuming that you have come across this kind of exercise before. Basically, it's a drawing exercise or a model where you take the head's length times 8 and measure out the proportions with the help of those sections. There's already a ton of videos on this method out there, but if you want to, I'll happily make one for you explaining this method. For the sake of keeping this video to a moderate length, however, I want to show you my easy way of constructing poses, in a way that makes the poses look dynamic and balanced so that they don't look like they tip over. So, when I get started on a drawing, I usually do a couple of these quick sketches. They also work great as little thumbnails to help me plan my drawings. Once I'm done drawing about 10 of those, I move on to drawing a few sketches that show a bit more dynamic. Starting off with the head, I sketch in the spine of my figure. It doesn't matter if it actually isn't visible in the drawing later on, this is just to help me construct the body. On top of the spine, I draw in the rib cage. Some draw it as some sort of log or a circle, but to me it works best to sketch it like an actual cage, or well, a basket-like structure. It adds volume to my sketch and I find it's also more convenient. Also, I already define where the lower ribs are supposed to be, and depending on how athletic my figure is supposed to look like, I'm already ahead on the muscle structure without having to guess and measure again later on. I add the hips, the collarbones and joints, and ta-da! I already have constructed a solid base for my figure. This works great for all sorts of twists and turns, and you also get a better feeling for balancing your sketch, so that it doesn't look like your figure tips over or is about to fall to one side or another. This way of constructing your poses works well for all kinds of poses, no matter if standing, walking, dancing, sitting, whatever you can imagine. You see, once the base construct is sketched out, it's relatively easy to add more details on top. It's unlikely to know all the muscles and little lines, especially starting out, so don't hesitate to use a reference for this. You know, I always recommend you guys to look at references. No one is expecting you to draw perfectly from imagination. Use art books, pictures, relatives and friends, or the internet for posing references. There's great websites or even apps out there that provide great material. I will list you a few of the ones that I'm using. Most of them are free or sort of free. Some of them have optional premium access, but that's totally up to you and not always necessary. Those links aren't sponsored or anything of the sort. I'm just sharing my resources with you. So, in a nutshell, that's how I construct and practice anatomy, but I would like to share some more ideas with you. There is different approaches to practicing drawing anatomy. Those are 1-minute sketches. They're a bit older than from my university years. And you can see those are really quick. With those, you don't really have time to think. So you just really quickly construct whatever you're seeing and you don't spend too much time worrying whether it actually looks right or whether it doesn't. The same principle applies to 30-second drawings. Like, those have to be much quicker. You won't get as much done because it's just such a short amount of time, but you do manage to capture, the gist of it. The purpose of those exercises is that it will help you to learn how to see and to process what you're seeing, and that way, by doing it over and over again, you will be able to capture whatever you're seeing, whatever is going on, even if it's something that's actually moving quite a lot or quite fast, because you know how to actually depict it. I think this is also like a minute sketch, but here you just capture the really basic shape. Oftentimes it doesn't look pretty and it's also not meant to look pretty. Instead, you get a concept and you get a grasp on how those, areas just work together. Like, we can see it's a standing body. We can see that those are like all bodies that are like sitting with one knee up. We don't need explanation for this because it just makes sense. And it also doesn't matter if this leg is a bit short, or this one is completely folded in a really weird way and would be broken or boneless in real life. But our brain understands, and that's really the most important part about those exercises. Also, something that you can do is just take the outlines, or like just take the basic lines. You don't construct anything, you're not using a sketch underneath, you just draw whatever you see. But it also doesn't matter like if the legs are too long or if they're too short, if the torso is a little bit in the wrong proportions, because it's just about understanding what you see and being able to reproduce it. And eventually, like once you're done with like really minimalistic lines, you can move on to spending a few more minutes on it and adding a little bit of shadow where it really is needed. And you see, it has a whole different aesthetic, and it definitely leads somewhere. Like we see that this person is lying on their side with the feet facing us. And it also doesn't matter if this isn't perfect, because we can see, and we see the dynamic in it, and it just helps so much to understand what you're actually doing with the paint, with the pencil. You can always go back to constructing your sketches and to have a sketch underneath that will help you bring out the details. But for just really getting the hang of it, it's great exercise. So if you start with those, you will very soon get to this point. There is absolutely no sketch underneath. And I think that was also a minute drawing, and you will be able, by practicing, you will learn how to put proportions, and it will start looking right, and you will be also much more confident with whatever medium you're working. This is ink, I cannot erase that, but I also don't care, and still it looks kind of cool. So practicing all those things will ultimately help you get a better understanding of anatomy. And from there on, you can just build up and, keep adding your details, and you will be fine. That's the way I practice anatomy and how I make it a little easier for myself. As always, I hope that you find some of the information useful and that you can't wait to try it for yourself now. Thank you so much for watching, and if you would like to see more, please subscribe to my channel. I got so much more that I want to talk about. Have a great day, and I see you next week.